Hello, everyone. Welcome to another story time with me. Today, I have an extraordinary tale to share with you, one that will leave you amazed and on the edge of your seat. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Avery couldn't believe what Mason was saying. They had been enjoying each other's company, and she thought everything was perfect between them. His sudden accusation caught her off guard. Confused and hurt, she asked, "What do you mean, Mason? Have I done something wrong?" With a grin on his face, Mason dismissed her feelings as naive, telling her that while she might excel in one aspect of their relationship, he didn't see a future together. He believed she misunderstood his intentions and even accused her of trying to get pregnant to manipulate him. Tears welled up in Avery's eyes, as she explained that she hadn't planned or tried to get pregnant. She saw this baby as a blessing from God. But instead of understanding or supporting her, Mason callously advised her to turn to God to take care of the baby. In that moment, Avery's world crumbled. She had believed Mason loved her deeply, with his poetic words and affectionate gestures painting a beautiful picture of devotion. However, now she faced the harsh truth of his real feelings, leaving her heartbroken and bewildered. She finally mustered the courage to ask if he was breaking up with her. Mason's callous reaction confirmed her worst fears. He seemed relieved that she had grasped the situation, remarking that her perspective was limited. Despite the pain, Avery knew she deserved better. She would find the strength to move on, holding on to the belief that one day she would discover someone who truly cherished her for who she was. Life had its twists and turns, but Avery was ready to face whatever came her way. The support of her friends and family, combined with her resilient spirit, would help her heal and move forward into a brighter, more loving future. "I need to talk to you," Mason said, his voice serious. "I've been doing some thinking, and I believe it's best for both of us if we break up. I want to make it clear that we should not try to find each other afterward. It's important that we have some space to move on." Avery felt her heart sink, struggling to hold back her tears as she listened to him. "Okay," she managed to say, trying to stay composed. "I think we both need to take responsibility for our actions," Mason continued. "I believe you should consider getting an abortion, and we need to stop dwelling on this situation. It's draining and not what I want for either of us." Avery felt hurt and overwhelmed by his words. She tried to explain, "Mason, I didn't plan for this to happen either, but it's not something I can just ignore. I need to think about what's best for me and the baby. I just don't see us having a future together," Mason replied, his tone firm. "You need to think about your choices and where they might lead. We aren't meant to be." Avery's voice trembled as she asked, "Do you really think I'm not worth having a child with?" Mason paused, realizing the impact of his words. "It's not about that," he said, softening slightly. "I just don't think we're compatible in the long run." As Avery struggled to find the right words, Mason handed her an envelope. "Here," he said, "I want to help you financially. Take this." Avery looked inside and saw a few $100 bills. She felt a mix of emotions, hurt by the breakup but also touched by his gesture. As he walked away, Avery wanted to run after him to explain her situation further, but she knew he had made up his mind. As the car drove off, tears welled up in her eyes. She realized that things had changed, and her life was taking an unexpected turn. She would face this new chapter bravely and seek support from those who cared about her. Despite the heartbreak, she knew she had the strength to move forward and embrace her future, even if it was uncertain. He had anticipated this heart-wrenching conversation, and as the words were exchanged, Avery's life took yet another dramatic turn, leaving her to confront an uncertain future on her own. Her childhood had been spent in a humble trailer park alongside her parents and two younger brothers. From an early age, Avery embraced significant responsibilities, taking charge of household chores and caring for her siblings whenever her parents were away working. Growing up in such challenging circumstances instilled in her a remarkable sense of responsibility and resilience, qualities that would prove invaluable in the years to come. Her mother, a dedicated nurse at the local hospital, worked tirelessly, often taking night shifts to provide for the family. Despite her demanding job, she always made time to express love and care for her family. Beyond their home, Avery's mother extended her kindness and generosity to the entire trailer park community, becoming a respected and cherished figure. Her compassionate and warm-hearted nature not only impacted the lives of her patients but also set a strong example for her children, who admired her devotion to both her profession and her family. Among the elderly residents of the trailer park, Avery's mother held a special place. She regularly checked on them, ensuring their comfort and offering her assistance whenever needed. Her genuine concern for their well-being, coupled with her selfless acts, endeared her to the community. The atmosphere of selflessness and compassion she created fostered a sense of unity and support within the park. Avery often accompanied her mother on these visits, learning firsthand the importance of empathy and community care. One night, while her mother was working the night shift at the hospital, there came an unexpected knock on the door. An elderly gentleman from the trailer park appeared at the door, seeking help from the one person he knew he could rely on in times of need. "Hey, Avery, is your mom here?" he asked. "No, Mr. Harris, she's working the night shift." "How can I assist you, sir?" Avery replied, her concern evident. "Oh, Amy's not feeling well again." "I told her I was bringing Avery," Mr. Harris explained, turning to walk away. Despite her young age, Avery had learned much from her mother about caring for the elderly. Determined to help, she quickly caught up to Mr. Harris and gently took his hand, leading him back to his home so she could care for Amy in her mother's place. "Mr. Harris, Mama won't be home for a while. Can I help instead?" Avery offered. Mr. Harris chuckled, showing a hint of doubt in his eyes before he spoke. "Honey, are you sure you're not afraid of using a needle?" "Mama taught me, and I've practiced on a tomato many times," Avery replied confidently. Mr. Harris cleared his throat and smiled, saying, "All right, then. You know how much I love Mrs. Harris, right?" "Don't worry, Mr. Harris. Everything's going to be fine," Avery reassured him, fully committed to helping in any way she could. Her natural talent for caring and dedication did not go unnoticed that night. When her mother returned from work the next morning, Mr. Harris approached their trailer with a bouquet of flowers in hand. The vibrant blossoms served as a token of appreciation for the compassionate care Avery had provided in her mother's absence and as a testament to the invaluable support her family offered to the trailer park community. "You are raising a kind-hearted young woman, just like yourself," Mr. Harris said warmly to Avery's mother, acknowledging the compassion and empathy she had instilled in her daughter. Mr. Harris graciously acknowledged the positive influence of Avery's mother on nurturing her compassionate nature and her willingness to aid those in need. From that day forward, Avery became a reliable source of help for the elderly residents of the trailer park who couldn't afford hospital care. As she continued her compassionate endeavors, Avery's experiences helping others and her growing knowledge of medical procedures sparked a deep passion for medicine. She began to dream of a career in the medical field, aspiring to attend college and further her education. Avery's father worked as a plumber, and while he occasionally returned home drunk, he was never aggressive or hostile. On the rare occasions when he was in a good mood, he would briefly engage in playtime with his children before drifting off amidst their scattered toys. More often, though, he would retreat into himself, leaving much of the parenting responsibilities to Avery and her mother. Despite his shortcomings, the family adapted and supported one another. While Daniel grappled with his emotions after the eviction from their home due to unpaid taxes, alcohol became a temporary escape from the feelings of failure and disappointment that weighed heavily on him. Although he struggled, Avery cherished her father and valued his rare but wise words. On the occasional days when he returned home sober, he would share stories about the complexities of good and evil in the world. These narratives became a guiding light for Avery, helping her navigate the world around her. Amidst their challenges, the love and resilience within the family provided a strong foundation for Avery's dreams and aspirations. With her mother's nurturing influence and her father's occasional wisdom, she set her sights on making a positive impact in the lives of others through her future career in medicine. From these stories, Avery gleaned the essential traits of a good person, and she dedicated herself to embodying those values in her own life, shaping her character along the way. On the day she was set to leave for college, the entire trailer park community came together to bid her farewell. Sophia and Daniel held an envelope of cash in their trembling hands, their heartfelt gesture to support their daughter's college expenses. Though their contribution meant a lot to her, Avery was adamant about finding a part-time job to support herself. However, Mr. and Mrs. Harris stepped forward, expressing their gratitude for Avery's kindness and dedication to helping others in the community. They assured her that everyone had come together to raise money to help her with her college expenses, considering it their turn to give back to someone who had given so much to them. Filled with love and appreciation, the trailer park residents had contributed to an envelope, which Mr. and Mrs. Harris handed to Avery. This touching act deeply moved her and further fueled her determination to succeed in her pursuit of higher education. As tears streamed down the faces of her parents, Daniel and Sophia, they stood proudly by their daughter's side, grateful for the community's generous support. Avery wiped away her own tears and smiled, looking out at the gathered people to express her heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you all so much. Your kindness and teachings have meant the world to me," she said. Turning to her parents, she added, "And to you, Mom and Dad, thank you for everything. I promise to make you proud." With the support of her caring community and the unwavering love of her parents, Avery left for college with a heart full of gratitude and determination, ready to take on the world and continue making a positive impact on others through her journey in medicine. "You raised me to be the person I am today, and I promise I won't let you down." In college, Avery poured her heart and soul into her studies, and after classes, she worked part-time cleaning houses to support herself financially. Fueled by her dreams and aspirations, she found the strength to overcome the challenges of balancing her academic and work responsibilities. Her unwavering determination and commitment to her goals were an inspiring testament to her resilience and the values she had cultivated throughout her life. However, Avery's life took an unexpected turn when she crossed paths with Mason, the son of wealthy parents whose home she cleaned. At first, their interactions were minimal, barely acknowledging each other's presence. Avery was a beautiful young woman, but compliments about her appearance were not something she had received often. Thus, when Mason first complimented her, she was taken aback. Initially considering it a passing remark, she was surprised when Mason continued showering her with more compliments. Gradually, their relationship blossomed, and they began talking outside of his apartment. After a few months, they officially started dating. Avery's once focused life seemed to veer off course as she became more invested in her relationship with Mason, unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. Despite her intelligence and resilience, Avery was also a naive and trusting person. She saw Mason as a kind and caring companion, but she remained unaware of his true nature. Unbeknownst to Avery, Mason had a pattern of pursuing relationships with women and then callously abandoning them when he lost interest, leaving them heartbroken and confused. His upbringing had shaped him into a spoiled individual, used to getting what he wanted and tossing it aside when he grew bored. As Avery's story unfolded, she would face trials that tested her strength, trust, and self-discovery. Yet, the values instilled in her by her upbringing would serve as guiding lights in navigating the challenges ahead. Little did she know that her journey would ultimately lead her to a greater understanding of herself and the resilience to overcome the obstacles that lay in her path. Blinded by her emotions and complete trust in Mason, Avery was unknowingly caught in his cycle of manipulation and selfishness. After their breakup, she found it difficult to come to terms with her situation. Despite the urge to seek support from her struggling parents, she was determined to handle everything on her own, not wanting to add to their hardships. Sitting on the curb, Feeling lost and alone, Avery clutched the envelope of money Mason had carelessly thrown at her feet. Time slipped away as she wrestled with her thoughts and emotions, uncertain about her future and how she would provide for her child. Suddenly, a man about 30 years old approached her, expressing concern. "Excuse me, miss. Are you all right?" Looking up, Avery tried to place him and realized he was Mr. Taylor, one of the new teachers at her college. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she replied, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you." "I'm fine, really. Thank you for asking." Mr. Taylor's warm gaze showed genuine concern. "You're a med student, right?" "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to check if everything is okay." Avery nodded. "Yes, that's right. Everything's fine. I'm just going through a tough time, but I'll manage." "I understand. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here," he offered. "Thank you," Avery replied gratefully, appreciating the kind gesture. "I'll keep that in mind." As Mr. Taylor walked away, Avery realized that she had been so consumed by her tumultuous relationship with Mason that she hadn't paid much attention to her new teachers. This encounter reminded her that there were supportive people around her, even in the midst of her challenges. It was a reminder that she didn't have to face her difficulties alone, and there were caring individuals who genuinely wanted to help her. Avery had always been an exceptional student, consistently earning top grades. However, ever since she started dating Mason, her academic performance had suffered, and she had gone from being an A student to a C student, struggling to balance her studies and personal life. On a cool and humid evening, the cold curb became too uncomfortable for her to remain seated any longer. As Avery stood up, she felt dizzy and stumbled, almost falling. But just in time, a man nearby caught her. "Whoa, are you okay?" he asked, offering his support. Avery's head was spinning, and she realized she had been sitting outside for too long, forgetting how cold it had become. Concerned for her well-being, the man decided that she needed help and asked where she lived. When Avery mentioned her distant residence, he realized it would be a challenging journey, as there were no buses until morning. Offering his assistance, he suggested they go to his place, where he could provide her with something hot to drink. Feeling too tired to resist, Avery leaned on the man, trying to remember his name. "Thank you, Mr. Taylor," she finally recalled. Surprised that she remembered his name, Joseph smiled and introduced himself again, making sure Avery knew his name as well. She replied, "I'm Avery." Joseph led her to his car, opening the passenger door for her, and drove her to his small apartment. Upon entering, Avery was astonished to see a collection of books on medicine, anatomy, and pharmacology neatly arranged in a small library. Her eyes lit up with curiosity and fascination as she observed the books, and Joseph noticed her interest. He offered her tea and sat down with her, discussing various diseases, treatments, and medical topics. Avery was taken aback by his knowledge in the field. "These books are my companions. They help me forget loneliness," Joseph explained, gesturing to the shelves filled with his cherished collection. As the evening unfolded, Avery and Joseph engaged in insightful conversations about medicine, forming a unique bond over their shared passion for the subject. Little did Avery know that this unexpected encounter would leave a profound impact on her life and lead her towards a path she never thought possible. When Avery heard the word loneliness, a pang of sadness gripped her heart, and tears welled up in her eyes, streaming down her cheeks involuntarily. She hastily wiped them away, feeling embarrassed by her emotional outburst. Joseph was taken aback by Avery's sudden burst of tears, realizing that something profound must have happened to her, more than just a typical breakup. Concerned for her well-being, he placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and gently asked, "Avery, are you okay? Is there anything you want to talk about?" After some hesitation, Avery finally opened up to Joseph, sharing everything that had happened with Mason. As she poured her heart out, Joseph listened intently and empathetically, understanding the immense pain she was going through and the weight of her burden. Without judgment, Joseph offered his support as a comforting presence. After Avery finished speaking, he reassured her, "You're a strong young woman. You'll get through this, but you can't give up on your dreams. You have to keep fighting for what you want." Then, he made her a cup of tea and encouraged her to rest. Feeling comforted by Joseph's words and the warmth of the tea, Avery realized that there were still good people in the world who genuinely cared about others. Exhausted from the emotional toll, she fell asleep on the couch, and Joseph kindly covered her with a blanket. The next morning, as Avery woke up, the weight of her situation immediately rushed back. She sat on the couch, feeling overwhelmed and unsure of what to do next. But amidst her anxious thoughts, the room filled with the delightful aroma of freshly brewed coffee. As she followed the scent, Avery found Joseph in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. His compassionate act touched her heart, and she realized that his kindness extended beyond their conversations. In that moment, Avery felt a glimmer of hope, knowing that she was not alone in her struggles and that there were people like Joseph who genuinely cared for her well-being. From that day forward, a special bond formed between Avery and Joseph. He became a source of support, encouragement, and guidance, helping her navigate through the challenges she faced. With the warmth of his friendship and his words of wisdom, Avery began to rebuild her strength and renewed her determination to pursue her dreams despite the hardships she had endured. Avery quickly got up, straightened the sofa, and slowly made her way to the kitchen where Joseph was preparing breakfast. "Good morning. I was going to wake you. I was afraid the food would get cold. Come on in. Take a seat," he warmly greeted her. Feeling grateful for his kindness, Avery thanked him but expressed that she wasn't really hungry. Joseph, however, insisted, "Yes, you are. You are hungry. Come on, sit down." Reluctantly, Avery complied and took a seat. At some point during their breakfast, Joseph mentioned that he wanted to have a serious talk with her. Understanding Avery's situation, he had an offer that might interest her. As the conversation unfolded, Avery listened attentively to Joseph's proposal. It had been 20 years since they last spoke, and there was something important he wanted to discuss. But just as Joseph was about to continue, the sound of sirens interrupted them. Mason's personal assistant rushed in, informing them that an ambulance was nearby for Mason. Avery looked concerned, realizing that Mason was in pain and needed urgent medical attention. The personal physician arrived shortly after, expressing his concern and urging Mason to have the necessary surgery he had been avoiding. Despite the pain, Mason seemed reluctant to accept his advice, but finally, he agreed to proceed with the surgery. Acknowledging the gravity of the situation, the physician suggested a renowned doctor at DK, someone he referred to as the doctor who does magic in situations like this. Mason's mind raced with worry, realizing that his life depended on the expertise of a stranger, even if she was a skilled woman. His lack of trust in women was rooted in the betrayal he had experienced from his beloved wife, who had attempted to run away with his fortune. The scars from that painful experience made it difficult for him to fully trust anyone, especially women. As Mason's journey unfolded, he would face not only physical challenges but also confront the emotional barriers he had built around himself. It was a path of rediscovery, growth, and learning to trust again, as he navigated a situation he had never anticipated. Meanwhile, Avery found herself drawn into the unfolding events, a witness to Mason's vulnerability and transformation. Little did she know that this unexpected encounter would lead her to confront her own fears and uncertainties, as they embarked on a journey of healing and self-discovery together. Thankfully, Mason's guards intervened, preventing his wife's deceitful plan from coming to fruition. The revelation of her intentions devastated him. They had been married for over 3 years, and he had never suspected such betrayal from her. This shattered his faith not only in her but in women in general. It made him question whether he could ever trust his instincts about people again. The pain was overwhelming, and Mason slumped in his chair, gazing out the window as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the room. However, the beauty of the sunset couldn't dispel the loneliness that had engulfed him. He was not old, nor poor, but he felt utterly alone. He tried to hide the emotional burden, putting on a facade to maintain a positive image. Life had been simpler and less challenging when his parents were alive. Tragically, they had passed away during a trip to South America when Mason was younger. To show his gratitude for their support, Mason had gifted them a vacation to Colombia when he graduated from college. Though he claimed it was a thank you gift, his true motive was to have a massive party at their house while they were away. However, the trip took a tragic turn as his parents encountered challenging conditions in the tropical jungle. Unknowingly consuming poisonous food, they fell seriously ill, and the inattentive guides rushed them to the nearest medical facility for help. Unfortunately, a critical error occurred at the hospital when the staff administered the wrong treatment. The loss of his parents was a deeply painful chapter in Mason's life. It left him with a void he had been trying to fill, seeking love and companionship. His ill-fated marriage only intensified his feelings of mistrust and loneliness. In the wake of these experiences, Mason found himself grappling with complex emotions and trying to navigate a path forward. He knew he needed to confront his fears and misconceptions about women, recognizing that not everyone could be judged by the actions of a few. Little did he know that the encounter with the doctor at DK, a woman who did magic in medicine, would become a pivotal moment in his journey of healing and finding hope once again. The tragic mistake had led to the untimely deaths of Mason's parents, leaving him with an ingrained fear of hospitals that haunted him to this day. This deep-rooted phobia had been a constant burden, causing him to avoid medical facilities at all costs. Even routine checkups became a daunting challenge, as his overwhelming fear overshadowed any concern for his health. During one such routine checkup, Mason's ulcer was unexpectedly discovered. Reluctantly attending the appointment, he had hoped to avoid any medical interventions. Initially, the ulcer seemed manageable, causing only mild discomfort, but the doctors advised surgery as the best course of action. Yet, Mason's fear of hospitals led him to postpone the surgery, ignoring the potential risks. Now, as he awaited the arrival of the ambulance, Mason's anxiety surged. The thought of returning to a hospital for treatment was unbearable, and his mind was filled with worries about the surgery's success and the possibility of another medical mistake. Each moment felt like an eternity, his heart pounding with fear and uncertainty. Unbeknownst to Mason, this pivotal moment of facing his fears would set in motion a life-changing journey he could never have foreseen. When he finally arrived at the hospital, he was teetering on the edge of losing consciousness. His condition had rapidly deteriorated, adding urgency to the situation. Once in the operating room, a team of skilled medical professionals prepared to perform the surgery. Mason's personal physician, well aware of his medical history and fears, ensured that the surgical team had all the necessary information to provide the best possible care. As Mason began to regain consciousness, a profound need to pray washed over him. In that vulnerable moment, Mason found solace in seeking strength from a higher power. His fear and uncertainty were momentarily put aside, replaced by a deep sense of surrender and hope for a successful outcome. Little did he know that this act of vulnerability and facing his fears head-on would set the stage for a journey of healing, growth, and a transformation that would lead him towards unexpected revelations and profound self-discovery. However, not knowing how to properly pray, Mason found himself gazing around the room instead. His vision was still blurry, making it difficult to discern the details. He could only make out white, shadowy figures moving about, tending to various tasks. These figures were the medical personnel on whom his life now relied. At a certain moment, the entire medical team gathered around a table where Mason lay. He felt a needle entering his arm, followed by a mask being placed over his face. As the anesthesia took effect, a doctor approached and looked down at him. In that fleeting moment of lucidity, Mason recognized her. It was the surgeon everyone had spoken highly of, the skilled professional tasked with his care. With the last vestiges of strength, he whispered her name, just before succumbing to the anesthesia. Avery. The sound of her name caught her by surprise, and she stepped back from the operating table, momentarily taken aback. Picking up Mason's medical history to confirm her suspicions, everything clicked into place. Her eyes widened in realization as she read his name again. The man lying vulnerable on her operating table was someone from her past. Memories flooded back, and Avery couldn't believe the twist of fate that had brought them together again. As she assisted with the surgery, her focus was unwavering, ensuring she performed her duties with precision. After the successful surgery, Mr. Reed, a colleague, complimented Avery on her outstanding performance. She modestly downplayed her skills, responding that it was just an ordinary ulcer surgery. However, the praise from Mr. Reed was heartfelt, acknowledging her mastery in the operating room. Amidst the commotion, Avery managed a smile, grateful for the recognition but knowing that there was something more profound at play. As the rush of the moment subsided, she found herself reflecting on the unexpected reunion with Mason and the significance it held for both of them. After the surgery, Avery needed a moment to process the whirlwind of emotions. She stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, contemplating the intricacies of life's mysterious ways. In that serene moment, she found herself longing for a familiar comfort, and she requested a cigarette, seeking solace in the familiarity of an old habit while the events of the day continued to unfold. Her colleague looked at her with wide, surprised eyes. "But you don't smoke," he remarked. "I don't, but on rare occasions when I need to calm my nerves, I do," Avery replied with a wry smile. They stepped outside together, seeking a brief respite from the hustle and bustle of the hospital. Her colleague lit a cigarette for Avery and himself, offering her a moment of camaraderie. As they stood there, he broached the question that had been on his mind. "Am I wrong in thinking that the patient is somehow related to you?" Avery hesitated for a moment before confessing, "No, you're not. It's someone I've despised for a long time." Her colleague nodded in understanding and kindly left her to her thoughts. In that quiet moment, her mind wandered back to Joseph's surprising offer. He had been accepted into a prestigious medical program overseas, and to participate, the program strongly preferred that he be married. Joseph had proposed to Avery, offering her a chance to marry him, give birth to their child, and promising not to hurt her in any way. He assured her that during the 3-year program, she would have everything she had ever dreamed of. After their return, she would have the freedom to decide whether to stay married or return to her former life. At the time, Avery had been taken aback by the offer. It was something she had never anticipated. Joseph had given her a week to consider the proposal, and during that time, they spent moments together, getting to know each other better. They shared stories, experiences, and hopes, building a deeper connection that left Avery contemplating a life she could have had if she had not taken the leap of faith with Joseph. In the weeks that followed, they enjoyed memorable evenings at various restaurants, engaging in delightful conversations over delicious meals. Each moment spent together brought them closer, and Avery couldn't help but wonder how different her life might have been if she had declined Joseph's offer. As she stood there, cigarette in hand, Avery contemplated the paths she had chosen and the twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. The encounters with Mason, her unexpected reunion with him during the surgery, and the memories of her time with Joseph all intertwined, reminding her of the complex and unpredictable nature of life's journey. As their time together unfolded, Avery found herself increasingly drawn to Joseph's personality and ideas, and his proposal began to hold significant weight in her heart. The allure of a life-changing adventure, personal growth, and the possibility of forming a profound connection with Joseph made the decision all the more complex. Curiosity gripped Avery, and she couldn't help but wonder why Joseph, a successful and handsome man, had chosen her for such an unconventional offer. She questioned why he hadn't already found a partner who could share the weight of this life-altering decision. As they spent more time together, the enigma of Joseph's intentions only deepened, leaving her to ponder whether there was something special he saw in her that she hadn't recognized. The mystery surrounding Joseph's proposal added to the complexity of Avery's decision-making process. She carefully evaluated the potential risks and rewards of this unorthodox arrangement. Her heart was torn between the desire for a new and extraordinary path and the uncertainties of stepping into the unknown. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Avery, Joseph's participation in the prestigious medical program had already been secured based solely on his own merit and qualifications. His marital status wasn't a factor in the program's decision. The proposal he had extended to Avery wasn't a mere requirement for the program, it was a deeply personal desire of his own, something he had yet to reveal. Joseph anxiously awaited Avery's response, hoping that the time they had spent together had been enough to convey the potential they shared. He saw this opportunity as a chance for growth and fulfillment, and he believed that together, they could create something extraordinary. As the moment of decision approached, both Avery and Joseph were standing at a crossroads. Each carried their own hopes and fears, uncertainties and dreams. The path they chose would have far-reaching implications for their lives, propelling them toward destinies they had yet to imagine. Avery eventually accepted Joseph's proposal, and what started as a marriage of convenience to enter the medical program together blossomed into a genuine and meaningful relationship. Throughout the year, their bond deepened as they navigated the challenges and celebrated the triumphs of the program together. Avery found herself cherishing the partnership she had with Joseph, appreciating the personal growth and fulfillment it brought into her life. As time passed, their love continued to grow, and 5 years later, they joyfully welcomed their baby girl into the world. The new addition to their family brought immense joy and responsibility to their son, who embraced the role of a protective older brother with love and care. This sibling bond strengthened the family's connection, bringing them even closer together. Despite their happy life, Avery couldn't completely avoid the fact that Mason was recovering in the hospital ward. Overwhelmed with conflicting emotions and unresolved issues, she reluctantly agreed to visit him. As a healthcare professional, she understood her responsibility to ensure his well-being, but she also knew that facing him could stir up old memories and feelings. When the day of their reunion arrived, Avery steeled herself for the encounter. As she entered Mason's room, she saw him lying in the hospital bed, looking vulnerable and weakened. A mix of compassion and unease washed over her as she began the conversation, focusing on his recovery and ensuring he had everything he needed. Despite their complicated past, Avery approached the situation with professionalism and genuine care. She did her best to set aside personal emotions, knowing that Mason's well-being was her priority. As they talked, they revisited memories from their past, but also acknowledged that they had both grown and changed since then. Over time, Avery and Mason's interactions became more comfortable, as they navigated the complexities of their shared history and current circumstances. Through it all, Avery remained committed to her family and the life she had built with Joseph, cherishing the love and fulfillment they found in each other. As days turned into weeks, Avery and Joseph faced the challenges of the present, knowing that their unconventional beginning had ultimately led them to a beautiful and loving family. They embraced their journey together, grateful for the path that had brought them to where they were and excited for the future they would create as a united and loving couple. "You wanted to see me." "I'm all ears, sir," Avery said, maintaining a professional demeanor. Mason's presence brought back memories and emotions she had long buried. "Avery, are you going to keep running around pretending we don't know each other?" Mason smiled, attempting to be familiar. But Avery swiftly withdrew her hand, refusing to indulge in any intimacy with him. "If you don't have any more questions, I should get going," she said, trying to end the encounter. "Come on, why are you acting like a little girl? Are you still holding on to those old memories?" "Things have changed, and we've changed," Mason remarked, trying to convince her that the past was irrelevant. "Are you still single?" Mason's question caught Avery off guard. She couldn't believe he had the audacity to inquire about her personal life. Holding back her annoyance, she smiled and replied, "I'm sorry, "Sir, but I don't think that's any of your business." With that, Avery turned and headed for the door, determined to distance herself from Mason's unwanted advances. She left him to reflect on their encounter and the passage of time. As she was about to leave the room, Mason, driven by his persistent nature, managed to sit up in his bed, asserting, "Avery, don't forget that I always get what I want." Avery couldn't help but feel a mix of irritation and amusement at his remark. Despite the years and her growth, it seemed Mason was still clinging to his old ways. Shaking her head, she left the room, leaving him to ponder his words and their current reality. In the days that followed, fresh flowers appeared on Avery's desk every day, clearly sent by Mason in an attempt to win her over. However, Avery was resolute and didn't succumb to his gestures. Instead, she graciously took the flowers to the reception area, where she left them for the nurses to enjoy. The envious looks from the nurses didn't escape her notice, but she remained steadfast in her decision to keep her distance from Mason. Despite his persistence, Mason found it increasingly difficult to have a meaningful conversation with Avery. Her professional boundaries and personal growth had created a divide that he struggled to bridge. The more he pursued her, the clearer it became that she had moved on from their past and was focused on her own life and family. Avery remained resolute in her determination to maintain professional boundaries and focus on her duties as a doctor, avoiding any unnecessary interaction with Mason. She had moved on from their past and was fully committed to her current life and family. One day, Mason was allowed to walk around the hospital, and he saw it as an opportunity to catch Avery outside the ward. However, his approach lacked consideration for her current life, as he seemed solely focused on the connection he once felt between them. As Mason stood observing birds fighting over a piece of bread, he was reminded of the battles people often have over various things. Before he could delve deeper into his thoughts, a white Lexus pulled up to the front door, and Avery emerged from the hospital. Seeing her outside, Mason perceived it as his chance to talk to her and possibly rekindle their past connection. He called out her name, seeking her attention, and asked if she could spare some time for him. Avery, with her watch visible, reluctantly agreed to give him 2 minutes. Mason began expressing his feelings, claiming that his love for her had not changed and that they should try again. His words were met with incredulous laughter from Avery, who couldn't believe his audacity. "What about my opinion? Do you want to hear what I have to say?" she asked, asserting her own perspective. Undeterred by Mason's persistence, Avery stood her ground, knowing she had moved on and was no longer swayed by their past connection. She had grown stronger and was focused on building a meaningful life for herself and her family. With confidence and self-assurance, she made it clear that she would not be drawn back into their past and that she was determined to move forward without him. Mason was taken aback by Avery's firm response, but he persisted, trying to guilt-trip her with memories of their past. However, Avery had grown stronger and more determined since their last encounter. She knew what she wanted in life: happiness, love, and a supportive family. Mason's actions only reaffirmed her decision to keep him at a distance and cherish the meaningful relationships she had cultivated. With unwavering resolve, Avery managed to free her hand from Mason's grip and walked away, leaving him to reflect on the reality of their situation. Just then, the door of the white Lexus opened, and a young man stepped out. Mason was surprised to see the striking resemblance between the young man and himself, albeit much younger. He couldn't believe his eyes. Avery watched with a mixture of amusement and relief as her son confronted Mason. The young man asked if there were any problems, to which Avery assured him that everything was fine. Mason had not been feeling well, but he seemed better now. The family decided to head to the restaurant where Avery's husband, Arya, and their father were waiting. Feeling defeated, Mason slowly sat down on the stairs, realizing that further attempts to win Avery back would be futile. As Avery and her son got into the car, the young man seemed fascinated by the resemblance between himself and Mason. Mason felt a glimmer of hope, wondering if the young man would question their connection and spark some deeper introspection. Mason steeled himself for the upcoming conversation, uncertain of where it would lead. The young man, his son, approached him with an unwavering directness that took him by surprise. "Mr. King, I have a curious personality, and I tend to question things around me. I've known you for a long time, and I know who you really are to me," the young man said firmly. He requested a favor, one that Mason never expected. "Please stay away from our family. If you don't, I'll have to stop you." "Good luck," the young man declared before leaving Mason alone with his thoughts. As the car drove away, Mason sank into contemplation. Sitting there, he reflected on the life he had built, a life driven by material wealth and a disdain for those he deemed unworthy. The encounter with his son opened his eyes to the emptiness of his pursuits and the pain he had caused. He wondered what could have been if he had made different choices in the past. Perhaps he wouldn't find himself sitting alone, estranged from his own son. Maybe he would have discovered true happiness and fulfillment in meaningful connections instead of seeking validation through possessions and power. A sense of loneliness settled in his heart as he realized that he was reaping what he had sown. For the first time, Mason truly regretted his actions and recognized the need for change. He had to let go of his cruel past and embrace a new path, one guided by compassion and understanding. As he stood up and dusted himself off, he gazed towards the horizon with a determination to become a better person. The encounter with his son had sparked a transformation within him. It was time to grow up and take responsibility for his actions. With newfound clarity, Mason returned to the hospital, ready to face the consequences of his past and embark on a journey of redemption. As for Joseph's decision to marry a pregnant medical student, it was an act of empathy and love. He saw beyond the circumstances and recognized Avery's potential. Their union had blossomed into a genuine love that extended to their children and formed a true family. Mason's life had taken an unexpected turn, and he had a long road ahead to mend the broken pieces of his past. As he disappeared into the hospital hallway, he knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one filled with growth, understanding, and the pursuit of a better future. The answer to why Joseph decided to marry a pregnant medical student lay in the depth of his heart, where love and compassion intertwined to create a beautiful and unique journey. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to my story. It was a pleasure to share it with you. If you liked it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories in the future. And if you have any thoughts or questions about this story, feel free to write them in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you soon.